Good morning, everybody. It's August 10th. First off, I want to welcome all of our new subscribers and new watchers. Slowly but surely, we're always going to pump out this content, but slowly but surely, we're seeing more people jump in. We're seeing more people that are interacting with us on, especially Twitter. Twitter's been really good for us. Instagram's been popular as well. We're getting the most followers on Instagram, but we're getting more engagement on Twitter. I think it's just frankly because it's easier to engage on Twitter. That's it. Again, we have a weekly podcast that comes out. So Spotify, Apple, go find it. It's out there. It took a little bit longer today to get this up, and for good reason. That's because shit is hitting the fan. And that is putting it nicely. I don't know why, but my head look off. My head looks weird. The hat's not helping. I record these early in the morning, and so hair's not perfect yet. Live with it. I'm going to skip through 4 out of these Hi5 because number 5 is all we really care about. Ramon Laureano, he is your king of the castle for this week. The week just started. Whether you count the week starting on Sunday or ending on Sunday, fine. He fought an Astros bench coach. That's what you get as somebody when you go like this. Come here when they're jawing. That's inviting him. And then you're banking on him not doing it. And then he calls your bluff on it. And then you have your players go stop him. So that coach, nobody knows who he is. He's a bench coach. So he's an absolute nobody. He's a nothing. So he needs to just get canned. Get him out of the bubble. Or shit, they don't even have a bubble. Get him out. Because again, we go over this almost week after week. The Astros have to know that everybody hates them. They're going to hate them all this season. The players will. Oh, and then you're going to get the fans to hate them this season and next season when they can actually go see them in person. That's going to happen. So just realize because you all are cheating scumbags that people aren't going to like you. So don't be inviting people to fight when your pitchers are beaming people. That doesn't work. That does not work. So Ramon called him on it. Ramon called him on it, went after him, and you had your whole bench clearing brawl. I hope Billy Beane's proud because that is somebody that you want on your team because it's absolutely ridiculous. It is ludicrous that you can expect a bench coach to be getting in the fight. I mean, who's that old man that Pedro Martinez threw down? He had like one small head wound and ESPN blew a gasket. Whatever. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about. He deserved it anyway. That wasn't... No. All right, I'm blanking. And nobody cares. Number 2, Derrick Lewis. Derrick Lewis is back, baby. And if you don't like Derrick Lewis, well, then your balls aren't hot enough. It is already 83 in this apartment because I don't have air conditioning. So, Derrick, I feel you. He was hot mic'd after his win, his knockout. He now has the most knockouts in the heavyweight division in UFC history. It's pretty incredible. And not a lot of I don't get to unless you're an avid fighting fan. Derrick Lewis is not a household name. So still having one of those records, he is well deserving of household name status. So he won again over the weekend, and he was like, "Man, I got to get this interview quick. Got to take a shit." And the interviewer was like, oh, okay. Interviewer kind of made it a little more awkward. He started using the word bowels. When you use it, just don't use that. Don't just either laugh it off and let him immediately leave and not have an interview, or just act like it never happened. That's it. There's only 2 ways you can play that because he wasn't funny enough to incorporate it into what he was actually wanting to. Number 3, Whipsnakes. Shout out to Premier Lacrosse League. This is only the second year that they've been on. Cable. Before they even started, they wanted to make sure that they could get eyes on the product because they knew the product would have enough power to garner more viewership. But getting an NBC contract to be on the actual NBC network itself, but also an NBC Sports Network, is huge for them because that's something the MLL could never do. And if it did happen, extremely rare. So even though the MLL product was fine, you were never getting any eyeballs on it. So that's why you need people like Rabel that are in the PLL to be able to say, put their feet down and say, hey, you know what, we're going to do this. And the interactions on Twitter yesterday for them, for their players, was incredible. And just the game itself for a championship game was some of the best second-half lacrosse, and I've played for about 10 years, that I've ever seen in my life. Being down 2 to up, down again, it was a roller coaster of a second half. When the first half looked like it just might be a normal, like, Floyd Mayweather defensive, lay some hits, don't get hit, that kind of bout. But no, ended up being super high scoring, amazing game. And Whipsnakes are your back-to-back champions. So, Whipsnakes Dynasty? Possibly. Number 4. This is the game you want to watch tonight. You are going to want to watch Pacers and Bulls. TJ Warren, Jimmy Butler. All they do is talk trash to one another. It's all they do. It's all anybody cares about. And we're going to get it tonight. Because TJ Warren is somehow turned into Michael Jordan in the bubble. Okay? Maybe he hates fans. Respect. But he's having quite the showing. Not only in the round robin, but actually in the seeding games as well. So, he is crushing it. Jimmy Butler is an incredible, like, blue chip player, to where he is not a Kevin Durant, he's not a Kyrie Irving, but he will consistently get you buckets. And he's also a consistent all-star. So, he's extremely good at what he does. We'll see if he's got enough juice in the tank to take down TJ Jordan tonight. My last one. This one, I waited a little bit to give you all a little background. Usually every day, I'm listening to some mix of Dan Patrick in the mornings, along with Pat McAfee in the mornings. So those two are between 9 a.m. and noon for, combined for both of them. And then from 12 to 3, Rich Eisen's on. So if I'm not eating lunch or something like that, he's usually on. So I'm constantly trying to intake as much sports news as possible. And as I turned Patrick on today, he dropped a monster bombshell within the first half hour, which you usually tease it throughout the show, but clearly he knew that he could fill 2.5 hours of talking with just this. He had heard from an inside source that both the Big Ten and the Pac-12 are planning to cancel their seasons tomorrow. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. It's demoralizing. It is. The Big Ten voted 12-2, apparently. I think they had like Iowa and Nebraska dissenting, but everybody else was in favor of it. Now, when they say cancel the season, I don't know if that means postpone or not, because the MAC is planning on postponing. They are not. They're not planning on it. Frankly, I'm not going to get political. I hear a lot of people complaining about this COVID, and what it's done. I mean, here in America, it's on us too. Australia's back. These other countries are back playing contact rugby, playing soccer, stadiums full of fans. There's got to be some accountability, plain and simple, and we need it. That's it. That's it on that. No matter what side of the board you're on, I think accountability is a great thing. Try to be accountable for myself. I think everybody should. So, those are 2 out of your 5. The SEC was really the only conference that said that they were going to still go ahead and attempt fans in the stadium. So I still think that they need to get to the point where they're okay with no fans before they cancel a season. Both the Big Ten and Pac-12 said there weren't going to be any fans, or they were extremely limiting it because they were allowing that to be up to schools. So I still think the SEC, and it really sucks because last night you had a huge movement all across social media, spurred on by Trevor Lawrence, who, we knock these people for, being kids, quote unquote. I'm only 25. He's 22, maybe 21 maybe. Yeah, he's going to be a senior, but I don't know if he registered. So let's just go 21. That these guys know what the deal is. They know how to get it done, and they want to get it done. So this weekend was also full of just absolute dog trash tweets. I mean, Florio was saying that players from the NCAA should be able to go play in the XFL. No. One, an XFL season isn't even organized. And 2, There's no better way to tank a draft stock than by looking bad in front of professionals. That's it. And that's exactly what would happen, is these guys would get stomped. I know you're joking like, oh, it's the XFL, but no. Go home. That's the most Ravel attempt tweet that I've ever seen in my life. Ian Rappaport said that the NFL is doing so much better than the NCAA. I mean, Ian, how brown is your nose? It's ridiculous. And I saw a tweet, and if I can find it really quickly, I'll give this guy a shout out because he was the first response, and his response likes were up there in the size of the original tweet itself. So let's see if I can find Rappaport. Come on, Ian Rappaport. There we go. Okay. I'm going to read this tweet because it's patently ridiculous. Imagine if college football had the kind of leadership that NFL and the NFLPA showed over the last few months. Well, what leadership is that? Refusing a bubble and then trying to absolutely steamroll your players by forcing a quicker opt-out date so that you don't have to pay them as much? Douche. To put the league and its players in a position to play a full season amid a pandemic. You're not putting them in that position. Without a bubble, you're begging for MLB-type cases. Plain and simple. It's a fact. This literally cannot be debated anymore. Just an incredible hours of work and teamwork. I will argue that the NFLPA is putting in a lot of work and a lot of teamwork. Tons of it. NFLPA deserves a raise. I don't really think they make anything because they're already players, but goes to show. And then he ends it with, and the NCAA is the opposite. A couple good replies. It's almost like there are critically significant differences between the two. Holy shit. You are not paying NCAA players. That's big number one. Number two, there aren't thousands. Well, I'm over-exaggerating there, but you get it. It's a lot easier to wrangle NFL players and give them rules because you can say, if you want your paycheck, you have to do this, this, this. You cannot do that with college athletes. You're on campus. You can't seclude them. How are you going to travel? You can't do a bubble because then how's learning going to happen? It's going to be extra work for professors. The logistics are wildly different to be comparing the two. And the NCAA is far more difficult. Can we also agree that the NCAA has done a terrible job? Sure, I would love throwing the NCAA under the bus. I'll do it as much as the next guy. But to argue that the NFL is doing good and the NCAA is doing poorly is trash. That belongs in the garbage. You can't even recycle that tweet. Garbage. Let's see. Oh, good point. Delayed training camp. But essentially, the tweet I'll find it later was, Ian, do your hands hurt from holding so much water? Because he's a water boy for the NFL. Couldn't agree more. You know who signs his paycheck. That's the type of stuff that absolutely grinds my gears because it is patently makes no sense whatsoever to compare the two. And also, the NFL had to delay training camps. Let's not forget that as well. Roger Goodell thought the season could go perfectly hunky-dory because he expected other people to do the footwork. Well, when the ball was in his court, he had to delay. He sat on his ass, and this is now what's happening, to where you're going to get an NFL season with no fans, and he said they're not going to do the bubble, which is already a testament to how dumb Roger Goodell is. And it's because he doesn't have a spine to talk to these owners some realism. That there's nothing wrong with breaking even for one season when you're making billions and billions every other season. We'll never see. If we see this once in 100 and you're making billions every year, 99 years in a row, just shut the hell up. Completely, patently dumb of these people. And it does suck because we had a huge swell of player movements that they wanted to be able to do some of the best things for them to make sure that they could play. Like I said, Trevor Lawrence was leading it. They said, hey, you know what? We would like to make sure that similar to the NFL, we have representatives from all Power 5 conferences that create a players association, at least for this season, so that we can make sure that we can play because all these students want to play. You want to know why? Because when you're in the Power 5 conference, you have a shot to get to the NFL. You can do it. You can at least make a training camp. Not saying you're going to get signed. You have an opportunity. And these guys don't want to waste their opportunity. And I can't blame them at all. I respect the hell out of it. So, you can blame the NCAA. You can blame the NFL. Whoever you blame, it's going to fall on deaf ears because when this news comes out, Twitter will be a disgusting cesspool of people arguing and yelling. And I'll be in there swimming in the mud. And it does suck because there's nothing I like doing more on a Saturday morning than buying too much Chick-fil-A, sitting in a long drive-thru line, get an 8-count nugget meal, add on a chicken sandwich on top of that, upgrade the meal to a medium, sit my ass on my couch, watch football for a few hours. Pretty simple. Nighttime rolls around. Oh, you want some wings? Sweet. It really sucks. It does. And this is kind of the swan song, so I'm glad that I was a little bit late because I did get this Big Ten Pac-12 news in. Monstrous news. Terrible news, but monstrous news. So, want to thank people like Dan, Pat, Rich for being constant newsbreakers and for being the best at your job. You are people that Matt and I look up to in the industry. If you got any takes, because I threw out a ton of them, I apologize for the long episode. But if you got any takes, toss them down. This is going to be on Instagram. This is going to be on Twitter. So, fire them off. We will see you guys on Wednesday. This has been the August 12th edition of the DH Sports Hi5 series. Catch you guys on Wednesday.